Hi, and welcome to the first week of a new series. My name is Stephen Young, and I'm the youth director at Rocky River United Methodist Church. If it's your first time hearing one of these videos that I have done, thank you so much for watching it. If you want to see other videos I have done, now it's been almost over a year, which is incredible. Go to rrumc.org, go to the youth tab, and you can find all the videos that I've done up there. So on our new series, it's going to be called Listen to Me, a series for both parents and students. So this series is going to be about parenting. It's going to be about what does it mean to be a child of a parent and the parent of a child, and I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a 3-week series. I'm really excited about it, and I know when it comes to talking about parenting, parents don't like to be taught how to parent a lot of times. So take this how you may. I'm going to be using scripture. I'm also I have some sources I've been using, this book, Shepherding a Child's Heart. Especially for this week, I used some material from that book. Hopefully this can be something that you can throw into your parenting toolbox. Also, I'm going to be talking to students too, and hopefully this is something that you can throw into your toolbox, and how we interact and communicate with parents and students and parents, and all the dynamics that are in that critical relationship. I also am aware that some people who watch these videos, they're not parents, they don't have children, but also understand this, we were all children at one point, okay? So we've all been parented by someone. Maybe we weren't parented by our parents, we were parented by our grandparents, by an uncle, by an aunt, by a cousin. That could be varied. And also too, I really stress this a lot, especially with older adults, is that you do have this ability to parent. There's children, in some cases there are children around you somewhere. Or you know someone who has children. You can always help in parenting in that way. And that's why I love to see the church is the body of Christ, that, it takes a village to raise a child. So if you don't have a child, please continue to watch. I think there's going to be some good stuff in here for relationships in general, and stuff that you can take away from. So with all that to say, this is our first week called Listen to Me, right? Parents have said that to their children, and children have said that to their parents. So this is a series, Listen to Me, a series for both parents and students. So this first week, we're going to be talking about authority and influence, honor and obey. Authority and influence, and honor and obey. So, all right, let's get to take this series off. We are all in transition. Parents and children are in transition, right? So we have every parent is going from authority to influence. All right, I'm going to explain all of this throughout this video. Every child is going from obedience to honor. Okay, so we're all in transition. If you're a parent and you have a child, you're in this transition. And if you are a student, or if you are, we all have parents. So if you're a child of your parent, right? Every child is going through the transition of obedience to honor. Okay, every student is going through that. Every parent is going through this. This is a transition that we are continually going through, really throughout our lives. So here I'm going to explain first to the parents what it means to go from authority to influence. So this graph I got out of the book, To Shepherd a Child's Heart. This graph here explains what going from authority to influence. All right, so this might be kind of hard to see on the camera, but let me explain it. Up here it says authority, and down here it says influence. And down here it says age 0 to 18, okay? So at age 0, you see influence is low, but authority is high. And what that means is that, I remember when I have 2 kids, and my oldest, McKenna, and my youngest is Anaya. When they were born, I had complete authority over them, right? They couldn't feed themselves, they couldn't change themselves, they couldn't get themselves out of the crib, they couldn't do anything, right? When you're a parent and your child is back here, you have all this authority. You got to do everything for them. right? And they can't even speak to you, so they can cry a lot, right? So they can speak in that way, but you have complete authority. You take them where you want them to go. You place them where you want them to be. You can put up all these gates. We put up gates. We put up walls. We put up all these things to keep them in a area. We have the complete authority over their lives, right? And any parent knows this with their child. When they were very young, you had complete authority over them. But let's look. This authority, you see how the authority arrow is going down and the influence goes up? As the child gets older, right? Your authority over them, right? The authority of that you can physically say, no, you're not going here, and you pick them up and move them, right? Or you can say, no, you're not going in that room, and you lock the door. You have the authority to do that. And the kids, your child has no ability to do anything other than what you tell them to do, right? But as the child gets older, your authority goes down, and the influence you need to have in your child goes up, right? So it's almost kind of like a letting go or giving over, right? And this can be very hard as it goes on. And I'm going to explain more of this later. But as your child gets older, your authority over them gets lower, right? When your child turns 18, you can no longer grab them and put them right there, right? You can't say, stay in this room, right? You can't just lock the door and say, you can't get out of there. The child walks, your 18-year-old just walk over and open the door and says, I can walk out, right? You no longer have that authority over them. And eventually, as they leave your house, they're on their own, right? So we're all going through this transition period of authority and influence. Because once they turn, right, as they get older, you might not have this physical authority. You might not have this authority over them, but you still have influence. What you say to them and how you live has great influence on your children. They watch you. They listen to you. They follow you. Your examples, right? Because right here, when they're young, they don't know mommy, daddy's angry. They don't know any of this stuff. They just feed me and put me to bed, whatever. But as they get older, they see how mom and dad act, right? Your influence goes higher. So we're going to look at Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. Fathers, which is also can be parents, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in training and instruction of the Lord. Bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Now, we're not going to talk right now about exasperating your children. All right, we'll get to that in another video. But parents are to use their authority, okay? Use their authority to train and use their influence to instruct their children. Right? So when you look at this graph, remember, you start off with a lot of authority, and you use that authority to train your kids. Train them in what? Train them in how to act in a grocery store, right? You don't take the gum, right? Because you got to pay for it. You train them in the bathroom. This is how you go to the restroom, right? You train them in how to treat other people. Think of training. Training is much more hands-on. Training takes authority, almost like the coach saying, this is what you do, right? Training is much more hands-on. Training is like, you don't do this, but you do this, right? But as the training develops, you continue to train them. What eventually happens is that becomes your authority goes down and your influence goes up, and you must instruct your children. Now, what's the difference between training and instruction? Instruction is almost like if your child wants to, so this is kind of the step I'm in. It's kind of hard, as you see, as a parent, to let go and start to instruct your kids. So, for example, my girls love to build stuff out of these blocks. You know what? And this is a perfect example, to train, right? To train them, when they have these blocks, the example of training is that I just build it for them. I just build it, and then they play with it. That's kind of how I see training, that authority. I build it. Now, instruction or influence is that I say, okay, I watch them, I say, this piece probably best here, this piece would be best here, this piece would be best here, but I'm hands off. I allow them to build it. I'm instructing them along the way and say, no, that piece is not going to work, that wall's not going to stay up, that piece is not going to fit, that piece is a perfect fit, and I watch them as they build this structure out of the blocks. Right? So instruction is kind of like you give your children the blueprint. Like, this is how you do it. Right? This is how you accomplish the goal, or these are the steps you take to achieve something. Right? You instruct them on patience, on thankfulness. You instruct them on instruct them of joy and happiness and where to find that. Right? You instruct them of that. You can't have authority to say, be joyful. Right? You can't have that authority, be thankful. Either they're thankful or not. Right? Ask any parent who has a parent of a teenager and say, you need to be joyful. Right? How well does that go? Right? It's instructing them. Using your influence to instruct them. So we go from authority to train to instruct to influence to instruct your children. It's this transition period that is happening all the time. And sometimes it's not always this boom, boom, right? There's times of instruction, there's times of training, there's times of instruction, times of training. Even when they're 17, 18, 19 years old, there's still times of training, right? There's still times of training. And next, when we look at the children's perspective, obey your parents in the Lord, for it is right. Honor your father and your mother, for which is the first commandment with a promise. Children are to obey their parents as they are trained up, and honor their parents by receiving and respecting their instructions. So now listen, students out there, right? This is for you, that you are to obey your parents because this is what God says is right. Now listen. Obedience is a word that we all, parents and children alike, all don't like the word of obedience. We kind of think, oh, I'm not obedient to anyone. I'm American and I'm free to do whatever I want to do. Okay. The truth of the matter is, we are obedient to something. All right. Whether so often it's the case that children are more obedient, right? As teenagers, teenagers are so obedient to their emotions. All right. Students allow their emotions to take them wherever it goes. They don't question it. They say, this is how I feel, this is how I am. Right? So we do know how to be obedient. The question is, who or what are we obedient to? Right? Some of these students are so obedient to their favorite YouTuber. They're so obedient to a certain activity, whether it's a sport or an instrument or it's painting, right? Some sort of activity. You're obedient to that. You're obedient to that football team. You're obedient to that dance class. Right? It's not that we don't know how to be obedient. We do. It's that what are we obedient to? And this is what the Bible is saying. The Lord is calling us to be obedient to our parents. Okay? Being obedient to our parents really because we're obedient to God. Okay? So we can't say that we don't know how to be obedient. We do. It's just that what is our obedience with? Right? Are we obedient to this or that? Are we obedient to God or our emotions or ourselves? Right? So children, we are to obey our parents as they're training up. Look, as parents, they hold the responsibility to train their children. And the children hold the responsibility to trust that their parents are actually training them. Right? And then students, children, are to receive and respect the instructions of their parents. Right? This means like listening to your parents, really considering what your parents are saying, helping your parents, taking time for your parents, right? Reaching out to your parents. I remember this time period, especially when I was in college after I graduated high school. and I'm in this period right here of receiving and respecting my parents' instructions. I'm in college, right? They're not there. They're not telling me what to do. But man, I'm definitely listening to their instructions. And I'm really listening and receiving and respecting what they're saying. Because I can learn a lot from them, and I see how hard parenting is. When I got to college, I was like, man, I'm really listening to what my parents have to say. I had the choice to, and I chose to listen to them, right? Doesn't mean I always did what they told me to do, but I highly respected what they said, all right? And as a student, as a child, this is where we're at. We trust our parents to train us up, especially when we're in their household, and whether it's your parents or someone else who's parenting you, right? And I understand too, and this is also something I want to take into consideration. Sometimes I can already hear students saying that, listen, my mom and dad, they're not here. Listen, my mom and dad are falling into this addiction or falling into that. That's really hard. And what I would say to that is that find someone who can be that parent for you. Find someone who can give you that training and instruction. Some adult figure you can trust. Right? Pray into that. Pray into that. For it is important that as your child to learn and listen from your parent or a parent figure and to receive and respect their instructions. To sum it all up, parents are ordained by God to train and instruct, while children are told by God to obey and receive instruction. All right? So what it comes down to is that both parents and children have responsibilities to each other. Right? Responsibilities to each other. Both the parent and the child, we have responsibilities to each other. And then also, under the authority of God. Okay? Both the parent and the student or the child is under the authority of God. So what tends to happen is that parents use their authority and they abuse it. They abuse their authority, and the child gets mad, and the relationship is fractured. Right? And we're all sinners, and I'm guilty of it too. Or sometimes parents don't know when to give up their authority and allow their influence to instruct their kids, right? Sometimes the parents take their authority too hard for too long, and the student or the child never gets out from under that authority until they move out, right? Or on the flip side, you have children that never want to obey their parents, never listen to them, because they believe they always know what is right. Right? So you have either side. You have a parent that can abuse their authority. You have a child that can not listen at all to what God says or what the Word of God says. But we have this responsibility to each other under the authority of God. You, the parent, you have an authority, and you have the responsibility to train and instruct that child in the way of the Lord. And you, as a student, you have the responsibility to listen and hear and receive the training of your parents. Through the example of Jesus Christ. Right? Look at the Gospels through this narrative, through this perspective. That Jesus, he's parenting his disciples, instructing them, right? So you see, in the beginning, Jesus is kind of like, this is what we got to do. He speaks lovingly, honest to them. You can see Jesus as he's like, get behind me, Peter, because you don't have the things of God in mind. He calls him, get behind me, Satan, some harsh words. But he instructs him when feeding the 5,000. He says, how are we going to feed all these people? And the disciples like, I don't know how. And Jesus says, watch this. Jesus is instructing them and training them, instructing them and training his disciples, right? Continually, all the way to the end. And even after the resurrection, Jesus is still training and instructing them. But eventually, look at Acts. In the book of Acts, you see the disciples, right? take this role and authority and instructing and teaching the church. Peter and the disciples take forth the church to Rome. How were they able to do that? They did that under the training and instruction they received through Jesus Christ, right? Throughout the Gospels, they used that to build the church, right? Perfect example of Jesus Christ being the parent for them, and then when he ascends into heaven, he sends his Spirit down, and they take that Spirit and they go out into the world. As a parent, that is your role. To take your child, train them up, build them up in the Lord, and send them out. Right? And as students, as children, we need to listen to our parents, being trained up by them, listening to their instruction, and trusting what they say so that we can go out. Right? So I hope that this first week was helpful for you. I hope this first week is something that you can take away from, put it in your parenting toolbox, or students can take a little bit from it as well. And I really believe that these words of God can be used in our relationship, the parent and child relationship, because it is a critical relationship. Again, thank you so much for watching these videos, and I can't wait. I'm excited to share the next one with you.